2 weeks to go until the draft. We've got two more episodes, this one, and then one more, so maybe not two. Or maybe we have something else coming up. Not technically Bengals on the Brain. This is Bengals on the Brain, and I'm your host, Joe Goodberry. Follow me on Twitter at Joe Goodberry. Make sure you hit the like, subscribe, and all the other YouTube stuff if you're watching on YouTube. We've got just a few players I think we've got to hit for pick 28 before I think we've covered everyone. I was going over and making a list of all the guys we looked at, and we started with Darnell Wright and Kalijah Cansey. We had Keanu Benton and Adetomiwa Adebawore from Northwestern. Excuse me while I get that name right, just in case they pick him. And I thought those were maybe second-round picks. Adebawore could be a potential. I mean, we may have to dive back into him. Could be a potential pick at 28. We also, after that, went with tight ends Mike Mayer, Dalton Kincaid, Luke Musgrave, Sam Laporta. So we've looked at all those guys. Then we went back to some other offensive linemen. We went back to other defensive ends. Derek Hall last week. Manuel Forbes at corner. I think we should dive into corner a little bit harder. Definitely. Because so now at this point we are pretty strong finish, 99 percentile on the draft board the draft spreadsheet we do every year. The corner class is strong, super strong. And it keeps coming to the point where if I use our board and I do a mock draft simulator, I want a corner at first round, second round, third round because it's usually a top 3 player on the board when the Bengals are on the clock. So could the Bengals feel the same way? Who could those guys be? And that's why I came to Forbes last week. He's the guy I've liked throughout the process, but I keep coming like, man, he could be the pick at 28. Who else could be? The guy after Forbes, in my opinion, and I think the consensus has him above Forbes, but we'll see how it falls. Because if we're expecting 3 corners to for sure go before 28, and that's the norm if you go through draft history, you probably get the 4th guy at 28, is the 3 guys Witherspoon, Gonzalez, and Porter? Because if that's the case, then that means you'll have Forbes and Deonte Banks from Maryland. And I know a lot of people think Banks is going to go a little bit earlier than that. I do think there's a chance he's still there. Using ESPN's simulator, it's less than 50%, but there is a chance, and especially if the corners go in a different direction than we think, because I think there's a couple other guys that could potentially sneak into the top 40 and maybe change the order depending on the team. So we're going to start with Deonte Banks, and I think he's good, obviously, but he's not as good as we originally thought. I always had I liked him. I gave him an 81, which is a first-round grade. Just not a high first-round grade. I don't think he's a slam dunk for a few reasons. And we'll put on the tape first, and we'll come back and talk about it. Deonte Banks, number 3 out of Maryland. He's in off coverage here. We're going to get it out route, and you'll see him click, close. Doesn't really eat that cushion up or close that gap really quickly. You get Schoonmaker on the same thing. A little slip at the top of the route for Banks. But he is 6 foot, 197, ran a 4.35 out of Maryland. You'll get a healthy dose of man coverage here, at least a lot of off coverage, but a lot of off man as well. And you'll get some press man also. So one of the things with Banks, while he covers that whole route really well, sometimes his ball skills leave me wanting a little bit more. I think this could have been flagged just by the way he's coming back to the receiver and not really looking at the ball, just putting a hand in there. We get a press situation here that turns into a run, which I like to see him throw guys down. He can be very physical. He is actually a thumper when it comes to his run defense. He'd rather be a bull and just knock a guy around. Good tackler, though. He just picks his spots a little too often, in my opinion, as a run defender. Here's a press man situation, and he just ends up covering this guy. There's a few of these in this game where the quarterback's scrambling, trying to find something, and Banks just easily stays with this guy. Oh, and he does play both sides. So here we go here in a man situation on a deep ball. Ball's going to be poorly thrown to the outside, and Banks does a good job of twisting and turning and tracking, locating, staying with it. He just doesn't get the last part here of catching that pass, which I think could have been done. So we got an off-coverage man situation against a slot receiver that's clearly quicker than he is.
his inside is open. He knows he's weak there. He even points to the safety at one point in a bit of desperation, like, yeah, I'm not going to get this guy. I need your help to get over the top. And he just gets beat for a touchdown here late in the game. Running situation, and he's going to have to come up, make a tackle on the running back, and he does very well. This is the last play for Maryland and Michigan, and Banks is in run defense. And I think he loses track of the ball carrier. Like I said, he picks and chooses when he wants to defend the run, and he's got outside contain. He's got to stay to the outside. So when he locks up and stacks this tight end and looks for the ball carrier, he's got to be able to disengage and stay with him, or he just never sees the ball carrier at all, which I think is more likely. But again, I think his intensity wanes at times versus the run. Switch it to the next game now, and we're going to get where he's like, okay, I've got outside contain, and he stays with it and makes the tackle for a loss. He's a good tackler. It's a hard thing to try and illustrate. He's a really good tackler, but he only picks to tackle when he knows he can make the tackle cleanly. So it's interesting. More press man here, and he gets a little grabby on the top of the route. I thought this was just going to be an out route, and I think he did too. And you'll see he's going to be on the left of the screen here, highlight him. And I think the press looks good, the initial jam, and then he's with this guy, and then that arm wraps around the back, if you could see that real quick, as the receiver tries to go back upfield. It's a bad route, but at the same time, he is grabby. He had a penalty against him once every 95 snaps in college, which is way too high. It's one of the worst rates of all corners in this class. We get an RPO slant. It's something you'll see every day on Sundays now, and it's more of a bad pass than anything, but you'll see he's really good at covering inside breaking routes. I think that's where he's at his best. Really, like, here's a situation right here. So you get a press, man trail situation, and look how he's underneath and undercutting it, because he's got the safety help. He can do that. But, I mean, when you understand your help and your leverage, that's half a playing corner anyways, and you watch him here. He's running this route for the receiver. If the quarterback wanted to throw that, it would be a bad situation for him. And we'll get, again, another thing inside. And I'm not trying to group these together. These are in order of the game flow, if you didn't know. But as I said, he's really good on the inside breaking routes because he's physical at the top of the routes, good speed, so he stays with these guys. And you see the quarterback is actually looking inside here, and there's just nowhere for him to throw the ball, so he comes to the next read and checks it down to the running back in the flats. Another press man situation. This guy actually beats him. I would have loved to have seen that deep ball and get more of an opportunity to see him track a deep ball and make a play on it. Only 2 interceptions in his college career. This is a good heady zone play. I think he's really good in zone as well because he's carrying that guy across the middle. He sees that the drag route's coming behind him, and he jumps on. And you even see he communicates a lot during the play. Watch how he points off, says, guys, this is yours. You take him. And he sees the route coming behind him. The quarterback's looking that way, and you see Banks break it off and go and pick that guy up on his side. This is an A-plus play, and I think a lot of defensive backs coaches would really like that one. And while I like this play, I think you can see why he only has 2 interceptions in his career. Other guys would probably just be more ball aware here or more ball aggressive. He's going for the hit the whole way and doesn't realize that ball lands right in front of him. Even his teammate, you can see, is telling him, hey, man, that's an easy pick 6. Press man again, and this is where he's going to have a lot of value for teams, even though he graded higher as his own corner, which I could see why, because he had some misses in man coverage, but really good man guy who are at least a lot of experience. You see him pressing this guy, riding him completely out of bounds. Even though he falls at the top of the route, the play's over. You know, he did his job. He got that guy to the outside. Next game's up. This is against Rashee Rice. Even though this isn't Rice here, you'll see him in a couple plays. Press again down the boundary, down the sideline, and he's got to make a play on the ball at the top of at the catch point. And you'll see here, he knocks the hands. I don't know if he actually contacts the ball. That's all 22 for you. We're looking at it in low definition, but it is a deep incompletion that goes for the defense. This one is caught by Rashee Rice, and I think Banks is doing a good job in zone here, coming off his guy and going to help the other guy. He sees what's happening, and I think he's going for the pick the whole way, but this is just a tremendous job by the mid-round receiver out of SMU, Rashee Rice, that the Bengals could have interest in. Deep post route here, and he's not really going to have safety help because the deep safety's on the other side of the field, doesn't see the post route coming, so he's really no help there, but Banks is all over it. I mean, the guy's not open. He's on top of him still. He's never stressed, never really threatened. I think these are things, little traits I'm looking for when I'm watching corners. Are you panicking? Are you worried? He's not here. If anything, he's mad the ball's overthrown because he wanted to make a play on the pass. Press man versus Rashee Rice, and it's kind of a back shoulder stop throw. And I don't really know what it was, but he gets flagged here. A little bit too much contact on a bad throw or on a back shoulder throw. Even though, what is he going over the back there? I mean, what are you calling? I can't see it from here. It must have been on the TV copy. 2 flags were thrown, so both officials saw it. This is one of my favorite plays. This will be one of our last ones. He's got quarters coverage, so he's letting that post route get taken up by the safety while he realizes, all right, they're running a wheel behind it. He needs to jump on it and stay on that receiver because the quarterback's actually looking that way. This is at the end of the game. They need a stop in order to get the ball back. And the quarterback's watching. As you see, he's looking, okay, post, picked up. Okay, I'll go to the wheel. Oh, that would have been an interception more than likely the way Banks was looking at it. So good job.
So the good with Deonte Banks, he's 22 years old. He's got a lot of press man coverage. He ran a 4.35. He's nearly 200 pounds at 6 foot. He's got good size. I wish he had more length. I wish he had better ball skills. I wish he was a more willing and aggressive and interested run defender, tackler, hitter. You know, that kind of guy that we liked about Forbes. And honestly, Joey Porter can be that way at times. I think Kelee Ringo can be that. I think Cam Smith can definitely be a more interested run defender. Banks is on the lower end of that. And I think he is a good tackler. Like I said in the video, I think he's a good tackler, but he only picks to tackle when it's going to be an easy tackle for him. And we saw a couple, especially like the Michigan game, where he gives up that big run at the end. I mean, that's tough for a run defender. You know, as an edge corner, you've got to be able to defend the run better than that. But I think he's got the speed. I think he's got the smarts. I think he's good in zone. I think he can be a press man guy easily. The only thing lacking there is the ball skills. So I like Deonte Banks. I would be completely cool with him being the pick at 28. I don't want to undersell him there because I do think he's really good. I'm just underselling in the point that I think he could be there at 28. And those are the reasons why. And he could fall behind even Emmanuel Forbes for some teams. The next guy that I think we should be aware of, and I think next week we'll do like some of the lower end. But the next guy we should be aware of, because we did running backs too, I forgot about that. We did Jahmyr Gibbs already, is Bryan Bresee. We haven't looked at him too much yet. We've mentioned him. We've talked about, I think we did a mock draft and his name came up. But I think the process in January started with Bresee as like a top 15 pick. I think coming into the year, a lot of people thought he'd end up as a top 10 pick. Bryan Bresee, his freshman tape is really, really good. And if that's who he would have ended up being the next 2 years, he probably would be a slam dunk top 12-ish, 15-ish pick. The problem is he dealt with a lot of weird injuries and his twin sister passing away, getting cancer and passing away, which will affect you, obviously. But even on tape, I thought he wasn't himself. Now, again, he's got circumstances out of his control with the injuries, but with his sister, that may affect his play. So how harsh should we be? He tested really well, but he's also 6'5 plus. And it's hard sometimes for those tall defensive tackles to pan out. I know we like them, but it's counterintuitive. You'd rather your guys, this is the opposite end of the Kalijah Cansey talk, where Cansey is 6 foot, that's probably too short, but 6'1", 6'2", 6'3 is great. 6'4", 6'5", 6'6", as you see these guys get, sometimes even 6'7", they become a completely different type of player. You're not going to be a penetrator guy that gets low, plays with leverage, explosive up the field. You're going to have to win with your length, with an array of moves, with lateral quickness and agility. So Bresee, when we watch the tape, he plays high. He doesn't have an array of moves that he can go to, even though he's used them all over the last 3 years. Like, there are highlights of him doing a spin move as an edge rusher against North Carolina. And it's like, all right, you got that in your bag. Like, I'd like to see that more often. So, like, the high-end upside flash plays of him, teams are going to love him. But the production score is going to be low because he's missed so much time. I mean, the man's only played 480 snaps over the last 2 years. We're talking about corners that are playing 1,500 to 2,000 snaps, or other even defensive tackles that have played 1,200 snaps under that same time frame. He just looks like, as of now, an interior pass rusher that has to figure everything else out. It would be a bit of a leap of faith at the 28th pick, even though the high-end flashes are there. Let's check them out.
Big number 11 there on the left side playing defensive end is Bryan Bresee out of Clemson. And Bresee is going to play a lot of end and go against Darnell Wright in this game. Last game of the year for him and Wright in the bowl game. And you'll see a few trends here. Number one, I think he plays a little high at times. I think he is reliant on the swim move and arm over moves. And I think he has very good lateral agility and explosiveness. And I think you'll see it here as he can cut back inside, come back in with the rip move, and then get a pressure, at least a hand, and then a partial hit on the quarterback. And that's going against an offensive tackle, an NFL offensive tackle guy that would be in the first round. So you'll see here as he's going low, and he does a good job staying low here and fights. Eventually gets out-leveraged by Darnell, right? But at the same time helps close the running lane, and that's when he plays low. So those are like the high-end plays for him, the last two there. He's going to get a pressure here, going outside, back inside against Darnell Wright. And again, he's not a D-end, I don't think. We're going to get a swim move. Wright drops his eyes. This is something we talked about when we watched Wright the first time 3 months ago now, however long it's been. But swim move, Wright ends up getting a hand on his hip there and pulling him back inside. And you'll see Bresee can't break off and make the tackle and doesn't get the holding call either, because I think I do see that a lot with him when he plays. He feels like he's being held a lot. I think when you lose the leverage and you don't have great hands, you will feel that way, and I think he does. You get a nice pass rush here. Not a nice one, I should say. You get a pass rush where he goes back inside, fights his way through, gets a pressure, and then mostly just being too tall and too high on that play. This is the rush I wanted to refer to, is where he and Darnell Wright get locked up. I think Bresee is reading run here before he jumps in, but it knocks his hands down, keeps him at bay very easily. 2 plays in a row for Darnell Wright to really not feel any type of stress from Bresee. He's really not an edge rusher. I like him more when he gets inside. We'll get to those games. I just wanted to show this game because it was clearly the end of the season. He should be full health at it. You can see against guards, he stresses the guards a little bit more. He really wasn't stressing Wright at there, but you can see the lateral agility, right? That play is a great example. He can skip a gap and just jump into the next gap very quickly at the snap. He's not really a penetrator, a straight line penetrator. He's more of a lateral explosive penetrator. And I think J.J. Watt was like that. I think Chris Jones is like that a lot. These tall defensive tackles have to be that way rather than upfield penetrators. And he hit the guy with the arm over move too, which I said previously, he really loves that move out of all of them. He and Darnell Wright here. Wright's going to blow him back maybe, 8 yards or so off the line of scrimmage. It's a leverage thing. Wright's getting underneath him. He's going to miss his swat. Wright's going to make him pay for it. At this point, they're like battling each other and fighting each other real bad. You see him standing up, and he's going to rush from the middle here and kind of get a glimpse in front of the pass rush or in front of the quarterback, at least enough to distract him a bit. He's one of the worst tacklers as well at defensive tackle. His 31% missed tackle rate leads all defensive tackles in this class. That's 1 out of 3. He's clearly missing, and you'll see he's in the radius sometimes, and he just doesn't do anything with it. I don't know what the deficiency is there, because overall as a run defender, I don't love him. You see him right here. He has no idea the running back's going right by him until the very last second. And that's a big explosive run if this back doesn't fall. It's an explosive run anyway. But for a guy that's 6'5", he loses vision a little bit too often. And that's a good stunt. You got to get the guy down. That's a sack you're missing out on. And that's part of his production issue. Taking on the double team, getting low, foot slips out as he tries to anchor and torque and twist and keep himself aligned. Does a good job stressing out, even though he goes a whole gap over, stressing out that right guard there and getting him to fall. Again, leverage issues here. You'll see a lot of these. He's playing a little bit too high. I like this play right here just because he shows spatial awareness and athleticism and not get tripped up on a lot of plays, which I like. I don't like when guys end up on the ground too often, and he really doesn't. does a good job staying on his feet. Taking on the double team, legs end up buckling, and he gets driven into the ground. I would say right now he's not much of a run defender, but he can push the pocket and he can stress you laterally as a pass rusher, which is what he did right there. And I've got some highlights at the end here. You see, look, good leverage, sort of, but then he gets high and he ends up hands to the face, makes a tackle, which is something I complained about. So it's nice to see him make that tackle. But when he got the hands in the face like that, it's could be a penalty. I got some highlights here, though, where I think you'll see the upside as a pass rusher, right? He goes full one gap across that right guard against the defensive end, arm over, quickly gets inside on the pressure. You'll see the arm over a lot, swim move, he loves it. There he goes, bang again. Misses the tackle here on the running back. This is Bryan Bresee as the full gamut of what he does. And then one more, full gap across, beats him across the face.
So that's two guys this week, Deonte Banks from Maryland and Bryan Bresee out of Clemson. Two guys that I think, one, Banks has a chance to be there. Bresee, I expect to be there, but has a chance of being picked. Like, I don't think it's automatic the Bengals will pick him. I do think they'd like him. Kind of reminds me of Andrew Booth's profile. A lot of these Clemson guys are the same because, same with Georgia. The program spits out similar type grades. Andrew Booth dealt with a lot of injuries, so his production scores were poor. And they ended up not testing. Different than Bresee, who tested it well, which may keep him in the first round. But Andrew Booth, we were nervous last year, or not nervous, depending if you liked him, that we thought, yeah, if he's there, the Bengals will pick him. Well, the Bengals went with the higher upside, more complete profile player in Dax Hill instead, and took their chances in the second round at corner. So I don't know if Bresee is going to be as high as it appears he could be. So I think he could be available, and the Bengals don't go in that direction. It'll be interesting to see because I do think he could help this team, and I do like the chance of his upside. I just don't know if I like the value there at 28 and taking that risk. I'd give Banks an A, and if they took Bresee, I'd probably say it's like a C. I'd understand it, but I'd have some concerns. And that's this week's episode of Bengals on the Brain. Which of the two, I'm going to leave this in the comments then if you're still listening or watching. Which of the two do you think is more likely to be there, number one? Because I think a lot of people still thought Bresee was going to go top 20. And then number two, which one would you be more happy with? And I think most people are going to pick Banks here, but I'm wondering if the Bresee guys will defend it because I think there's a few out there. Until next time, guys and girls and everyone, Bengals fans. Till next time, Who Dat?